Hey, good morning, everybody. How y'all doing? Hope all is well. So here we are again. I'm here with my good friend Shantal.
Good morning.
Morning, nice to see you. I haven't seen Shantal in, just realized the conversation, I haven't seen Shantal in 18 years. Like, that is so crazy. And so there's this story that Shantal tells. I could just start off right there. This story that Shantal tells about the first time that she met me, which was 18 years ago. And it was something that I had basically completely forgotten about until she brought it up some years later. So Chantal, tell us about the first time that we met and like how that happened.
But I just want to add to that 18 years ago was the first and only time we met. So this is a reunion, actually.
Yeah, that's crazy. Crazy.
And we met in a train station in England.
Right.
It was my first time. I was traveling with my mom to go to France as a student, 17 years old.
Right.
And we had never traveled outside of the United States and in the Caribbean, so we'd never been to Europe. And we were trying to get to the train station to take the Eurostar from London to Lille.
Right.
But there's a change in there where you have to change train stations.
Right.
And we were completely lost. We had no idea what we were doing.
Right.
Had 2 suitcases.
Right.
Each.
Lord.
Right. Heavy. And in so much distress. And I think y'all heard, because you were with your cousin at the time, and y'all heard the accent, and y'all said, "You're from Trinidad?" Like, "Yes." "You're from Trinidad?" "Yes." And y'all helped us carry the suitcases down to the platform.
Right.
And y'all took the same train with us up until a point, I think.
Okay.
And then we were able to continue on to the journey. But my mother and I, she said she doesn't remember your name, but she remembers the angels that showed up on that day, because if it weren't for y'all, we don't know how we would have figured out. I mean, maybe we might have eventually figured it out, or somebody else might have passed. But I think that's just also the power of community, because outside of Trinidad and Tobago, I think Trinidadians, Trinbagonians do recognize each other and band together and help each other.
For sure.
And I think the fact that you don't remember, I think for you it's just like a normal, regular day. Helping somebody. This is something that you probably do all the time. Like, it wasn't imprinted on your mind because this for you was just normal.
True.
But for us, it was life-saving, and we never forget it.
Yeah, no, that's no problem at all. And well, yes, I try to be of help to others always, but especially Trinis. And you're right that like we would always have a special place in our heart if we see a fellow Trinidadian, especially abroad in England and even more so in France. Yeah. So just like me, as you mentioned, you did your studies in France. So let's start the convo there. You said that you went to the University of Lille. How was that? How was the weather to start with?
The weather was cool. It was like London, so it's rainy, grey, more grey and rainy than in other parts of France. And they always tell you about, because it's the north, le nord, and how rainy and grey it is. As a matter of fact, there's a movie about that called in French called Bienvenue chez les Ch'tis.
Yes, I know.
Epic French movie, and it talks about that, but it also touched on the fact that people from the north of France are actually quite warm, quite welcoming, and so that was our experience.
Okay.
And I went with 2 other Trinidadian students in my year.
Okay.
So it was 3 of us.
Right.
We went to the University of Lille to study langue étrangère appliquée.
Okay.
There were about 2 or 3 other Trinis who were in the university as well. So in total, we had a small group, which is
small
nice.
Trini, yeah.
And people were always talking and saying, "But how is it that y'all are so happy? Y'all come to school smiling, singing." And we're just like, well, yeah, because that's just the Caribbean aspect to us, Keep a smile on our face. We're cold, but hey. And just, the curiosity, the learning experience, because it's not just about what you study in class, but everything was a learning experience.
True.
You know.
So seeing that you mentioned studying, right? You just mentioned that you, for your bachelor's, would have studied langue étrangère appliquée
Yes.
in English. That's applied foreign languages, even
Yes.
though that doesn't really mean much in English. But what I realized is that the different universities in France had their own individual syllabus that they would prepare, even though the bachelor's degree was technically the same. So tell us a little bit about your experience with langue étrangère appliquée.
So one of the reasons why I chose Lille to begin with was because they had a lot of choices when you come to your third year. So your third year of the bachelor's is the final year, and you get to specialize.
Right.
So the thing about langue étrangère appliquée is not like a normal French or Spanish degree where there's a heavy literature component.
Right.
That is replaced by civilization and culture. So understanding the Spanish-speaking countries, well, because it was in France, we would study English-speaking countries like the US and the UK.
Yes.
But then they would apply, so the applied part is applying it to economics. My first French class was economics. I'd never studied economics in my life.
Same here.
But you know, translations, of course.
Right.
So Lille had the specializations in translation, tourism, and international business.
Okay.
So I started out thinking I was going to do international tourism, but then I said, okay, let me go broader.
Right.
And so in my third year, I chose international business.
Okay.
Right. And then from there, I went on to also do a master's, also in langue étrangère appliquée.
Okay.
So apply foreign languages, but the international business and negotiations specialization was what I chose for the master's, and that was even bigger in terms of the components. So it's a little less language, but a little more business. So it was, you know, in finance, management, project management, customs, understanding customs, union and all of that. Geopolitics, understanding European Union. So good.
Wow, crazy. And funnily enough, I literally just heard you explain langue étrangère appliquée, and I learned something in the sense that so I guess it sounds a little different to you in that I didn't know what I was going to study when I first went to France. They told us langue étrangère appliquée, English and Spanish. And I thought that it was just a degree in English and Spanish, and not understanding, as you said, that yes, we learned subjects for them, the foreign languages, for the French, the foreign languages were English and Spanish.
Yes.
So yes, we learned French, Spanish, and English, but we also learned them applied in the context, in your case, of business. In my case, more law, and eventually translation.
So yeah, I took law courses as well. Enjoyed it. Didn't understand a word for the first semester, but still tried to answer questions and all of that. It was a process.
Listen, I really hope one day to have a conversation with my law teacher from the University of Tours, Monsieur Michel Foran, because just like you, my first year in France doing law, I believe I got like 5% or something like that, 2 out of 20, 1 out of 20 or something like that. Was really bad. But Monsieur Foran, he was an angel, and like he grew my love for law and how to apply law with languages. He's the person that guided me to do the masters that I ended up doing. So I owe a lot to him. So yeah, but anyway, so you finished your master's in langue étrangère appliquée, international business, and then what? Right.
So before I was actually officially finished with the master's, I was doing an internship at Auchan. So Auchan is a hypermarket, so kind of like it's kind of like Walmart and Price
for Trinidadians. It's kind of like Price Mart, but bigger.
Yes. So they have branches all over France, other places in Europe, and I was working in the supply chain section. But while I was there, I knew I was coming back home. So my parents, they saw the advertisement for international relations officers at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Trinidad and Tobago. And they encouraged me to apply even from abroad because, well, with the deadlines and everything, I knew I would still be abroad. So I did the application. My dad dropped it in for me. Right. And then a few weeks later, I got a call saying that they wanted to do the exam. And thankfully, I was in Lille because then I could take the Eurostar train back
to London.
So I did that. I took the train, sat the exam, came back to Lille on the same day. Right. And a couple of weeks after that, I would say a couple of weeks, maybe, but more than a couple of weeks, so maybe a month and a half after, they called me to do the interview. And did the interview via Skype. And so went back again. I had to do it at the High Commission in London. So went back, did the interview, traveled back on the same day, and just waited. And before I was finished with the internship, they offered me a position. So when I was packing up, I knew I was packing up to come home to a job. Thankfully. And, I arrived on Friday, started work on Monday.
Wow, that's crazy. So just right there, because I'm hearing you saying you basically changed countries, time zones over the span of a weekend, right?
Yes.
And as somebody who has both lived in Europe and lived in Trinidad, it is two completely different mindsets and ways of living. So tell us a little bit of how that adjustment was in terms of, in Friday, you're in French thinking, French mood, and then Monday, back to Trinidad. How was that?
Well, it was a culture shock, an actual culture shock in reverse. I couldn't believe it. It took me a while to
readjust.
I would say it took me a few years to readjust because I was so accustomed by that time, taking my train, my metro to where I needed to go.
Yes.
And I came back home, I didn't even know how to drive. So I eventually had to learn how to drive, get a car, that kind of thing. And then also just the work culture, the environment is very different, So, I met a Trinidadian who studied in Lille with me. I met her not too long after I got back, and my first inclination was to, do the bees.
Bees, what?
She's like, we're not in France anymore. And as I said, it was a shock.
Yes, I could imagine. So, all right, so that sounds like the culture. Were there any adjustments that you needed to make in terms of how you actually approach your work itself?
Yes, so I would say in terms of the work itself, well, it was a completely different field, right? You hear about diplomacy and you hear about working in embassies and being an ambassador and a diplomat, but really and truly the work, the content of it, I had to learn from scratch. Because I didn't study international relations, I studied business. So, and languages. So, it was having to do the training.
Yes.
Right? And understanding what the different sections involved. So when I started working, I worked in the protocol section. Started working in the protocol section. That's the section that deals with the accreditation of ambassadors in the country, in Trinidad and Tobago, and also the accreditation of our ambassadors abroad. We also are kind of as a protocol section, they're the face of the ministry because they're the first line of interaction with international organizations and embassies. For National Day events that the minister would attend, the protocol officers expected to attend as well. Foreign heads of state and government that come to the country, the protocol officer would be there to meet and greet.
Wow.
Ambassadors, when they come for the first time and they leave for the last time, there's a protocol officer from the ministry that is there to receive them. So all of those things you learn as you go along, right?
So it sounds as though you had to interact with a lot of important people.
Yeah.
Can you give us some examples of the types of ambassadors or dignitaries that you would have had to work with?
So we would have had, well, I'm going to give it, for example, in the context of some of the high profile events. While I was there, we had the state visit
Okay.
of the president of the People's Republic of China, Xi
Okay.
Jinping. So when
Right.
he came to Trinidad, and I was part of the team.
Right.
He came with his wife, and I was the liaison for this what they call the spousal program. So
Okay.
everywhere that his wife went, I was there as a protocol officer on the scene.
Right.
And in terms of the planning for all of that, part of the planning team.
Right.
Then the former Prime Minister of Japan,
Okay.
Shinzo Abe, he came to Trinidad
Right.
as well, and part of the planning team for that.
Wow.
We also had a CARICOM Heads of Government Conference.
Okay.
And so that year that the CARICOM Heads of Government Conference took place, the president of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela,
Right.
Maduro, he was the guest of honor.
Okay.
And I was in the liaison officer for the Venezuelan delegation.
Wow.
That part of the
Right.
program. So it means interacting with a lot of embassies,
Yes.
interacting with a lot of ambassadors.
Yes.
Even, for example, if the Prime Minister of Grenada or the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and Grenadines, if they come to Trinidad, sometimes they are in transit to another country.
Right.
And you'd be there as protocol officers to receive them.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds mind blowing. I can't even imagine the type of pressure that a job like that would entail, because it sounds as though it requires a lot. It requires a lot of preparation beforehand.
Yes.
It requires a lot of poise in order to be able to receive these people, interact with these people.
Yes.
Thankfully, we learn a little Spanish, so to interact with the president, the president or his entourage.
Delegation,
Yeah. And I'm wondering, listening to what you say, if you think that the fact of having lived in France and studied langue étrangère appliquée, if that helped you at any point in terms of being able to properly fulfill your role there.
Of course, for sure. So I will give you two instances.
Okay.
So one, while I was in the protocol section, there was an opportunity to go on a training course.
Okay.
And this was for Caribbean community, so CARICOM diplomats.
Right.
It was done through the Mexican and Chilean development agencies in conjunction with CARICOM.
Okay.
And this training course was for 3 months in Mexico.
Right.
At a university learning Spanish.
Right.
And then 1 month at the Diplomatic Academy in Chile.
Okay.
And I would say that because I was already, really good in Spanish, I was able to go into a higher level at the university.
Right.
And, we had to do presentations and that kind of thing. So I did my presentation on Afro-descendants in Mexico.
Okay.
Because I hadn't realized that there were Afro-descendants, right? And to this day, the teacher who was the teacher for that class, we're still in contact. And every now and then he would send me resources and that kind of thing, because they talk about it more in Mexico.
Right.
And then being able to follow the classes at the Diplomatic Academy in Chile, those were entirely in Spanish. And so I was able to follow up because there were people who had different levels of Spanish.
Right.
But because I was already,
seasoned.
we had done it up until master. So it was more like, brushing up on Spanish and getting that technical Spanish in international relations and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So that was one instance. And then a second instance where this time French came into play.
Okay.
Was a couple years later. I was in the consular section. So the consular section deals with Trinidad and Tobago nationals who are in distress abroad.
Okay.
For example, if you get locked up, if you
Right.
detained, if you lost your passport.
Right. Pandemic.
Yeah, pandemic. Well, in this instance that I'm going to talk about was with hurricanes Irma and Maria, and having to evacuate people who were affected by that hurricane in the different Caribbean islands.
Right.
So I was a part of the team that was dealing with the repatriations, because we have Trinidad and Tobago nationals everywhere.
Abroad, of course, as we know.
They're like souls in everywhere. Right. And so we also had nationals there.
Right.
In St. Martin.
Right.
And there, a woman and her grandson unfortunately passed away in St. Martin. And I had to deal with the funeral home. So they sent, they transferred their bodies to Guadeloupe.
Right.
And I was dealing with the funeral home in Guadeloupe to get them back to Trinidad. Right. And because I was the only person in the section who spoke French at that time, I was liaising with the funeral home practically on a daily basis, getting updates where, because they had to do an autopsy, they had to do all these different things before they could repatriate the woman and her grandson.
Right. Wow.
So their French came in really handy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you said that after your first, let's call it initiation in the protocols department, that you then transferred to the...
Yes. So now the difference with protocol and consular. So protocol section deals with the ambassadors and the diplomats.
Right.
And then consular section would deal with persons who are like members of the public who, for example, you say that you haven't heard from your relative who lives abroad, let's just say some foreign country, in months, and you're accustomed to hearing from them. Somebody can come in and say, hey, I haven't heard from this person, and then it's possible for the mission abroad, to Trinidad and Tobago Embassy or High Commission, to get in contact with the authorities there maybe, and do what they call a whereabouts visit. So, inquire.
Yes.
Right? If you are dealing, the consular section also deals, for example, with, as I would have said, persons who are detained abroad in terms of trying to get information. So they don't actually get involved in the judicial process, but they would follow up to see if this person who's in jail needs any sort of consular assistance. So maybe they need to reach out to family members to say, I'm in prison. Or they might need some sort of, if, for example, they have a medical condition that they would like to, have follow-up with because they're detained, So those are the types of things that is a completely different, it's away from the events.
Yes.
But it's the
more to the day-to-day problems the everyday person might be facing.
More the day-to-day problems that you would face as somebody who's living abroad.
Okay.
We've had to deal with situations where, for example, I had someone who went to a foreign country, she was on scholarship, and then she got sick and she had to come back home. If you've lost your passport, you have to reach out to the mission and explain to them
what
happened and kind of guide them through that process. Consular section also deals with the repatriation of nationals who have died abroad. They are part of the process with the Ministry of, back then it was National Security, in terms of making sure that all the documentation is correct.
In order.
So when for the repatriation of the person's bodies. So
all right. How long would you have spent in these two departments?
So in total, I would have been at the ministry for 5.5 years.
All right.
Yeah.
So 5.5 years, and then
there was an opportunity that came to work at the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands.
Okay.
That was, opportunity to be, back then they called it the General and Consular Affairs Officer. But it's basically a position where you're the management assistant to the assistant to the ambassador, deputy ambassador,
Okay.
and then it's a small mission, very
Okay.
small. So in instances where, for example, the consular officer was absent, and this person, the management assistant, would also act in the consular officer's place.
Okay.
So it was sort of a dual role, but with more emphasis on being the assistant to the ambassador and the deputy ambassador.
So can you give us some examples of what your day-to-day would have been like?
Oh, yes. So the day-to-day would have been planning the ambassador's, managing his calendar.
Okay.
And any events that he wanted to planning those events.
Right.
Sending out the invitations, tracking the guest list.
Right.
Talking to caterers.
Right.
Interacting with the wait staff, ensuring that the event goes off without a hitch.
Right.
So you have the events aspect, but you also have any meetings that he needs to plan, reaching out to those people, planning the meeting, putting it in his calendar.
Right.
Any correspondence that comes to the embassy, checking the general inboxes, answering the phone.
Right.
Right.
Wow.
And also making sure that all the correspondence with the diplomatic correspondence, editing, drafting that correspondence and sending it out. So that was the first, I would say, 2 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Two and a half years.
So that was your first 2.5 years.
Yes.
And after that.
And you would think that it's some people would think about it as, she's just a secretary, but honestly,
that's not what I'm thinking.
People have no idea, and people underestimate, but persons who are administrative assistants and who act in that role,
they
really are the nexus in the organization, because in terms of the meetings and drafting the minutes and keeping track of all the different things that happen in the different sections. You also have an understanding of how the organization works, because you are exposed to all of the information.
Yeah.
So I would say that it was a really good.
Not to